My favorite genre of video games is the first-person shooter. This is something that's been consistent about me for the entire time I've been a gamer. There's just something about FPS games that makes me love them. If I enjoy the overall gameplay, I'll like an FPS game. It doesn't matter if it's single player, online PvE, or online PvP. I'm very big into old school FPS games, so of course I'm also a fan of Duke Nukem. Duke is my hero, and I mean that unironically. Before I had even started grade school, I remember watching my dad and older sibling play the Nintendo 64 port of the game, which was appropriately titled Duke Nukem 64. For a long time, the two of them hogged all of the action and never even let me play the game. But I didn't let that stop me from being the Duke. Watching them play the game would cause me to get so hyped that I would start running around our living room, shooting imaginary aliens with finger guns, while incorrectly quoting Duke's one-liners. I can still remember how I made the game's guns with my fingers. When I was using the pistol, I did this with my hand. And when I was using the shotgun, I did this. I'm embarrassed to admit that I haven't really changed all that much in the past 20 years, as this is something I still enjoy doing when I'm all alone. The only difference is now I do this with an innumerable amount of guns from different FPS games. Despite being a huge fan of Duke Nukem 3D and a handful of Duke spin-off titles, like 0 Hour, I wasn't actually too interested in Duke Nukem Forever when it was finally released in 2011. During that time, my FPS fix was being satisfied by games like the original Black Ops, BioShock 2, and Halo Reach. Now as of 2024, I've beaten Duke Nukem Forever 4 times, but I didn't actually play it for the first time until 2014, 3 years after the game had came out. Upon finishing my first playthrough, I didn't really have any strong opinions about it. It wasn't the worst game I'd ever played, but it wasn't good either. For years after this, anytime I got the itch to play Duke Nukem Forever, I just played the mod for Duke 3D, known as DNF 2013. While I'm on that note, if you're a fan of Duke, you need to play this mod. Seriously. It's short, only taking around 2 hours to complete, but it's fantastic and made with love. Anyway, my second playthrough of DNF was in 2021. This time around, I played it on my PS4 with my PS Now subscription. The experience of playing it on PS Now was honestly dreadful. The game had severe input lag and frame rate issues. Due to it being unavailable to download, it was only playable via streaming. Despite this, I actually enjoyed the game a lot more this time around. My third and fourth playthroughs took place in March and May of 2024, and these 2 playthroughs are where the gameplay footage of this review comes from. We can make jokes and say that I'm suffering from Stockholm Syndrome, or that I'm forcing myself to like the game because it was the last Duke game to ever be made, but the more I play DNF, the more I find myself enjoying it. So with all of that out of the way, let's get into the game itself. I'm not too interested in discussing the storyline here, as it's pretty clear that DNF is a title where the gameplay comes before the story. If you do need to be brought up to speed on what's happening here though, I've got you covered. Several years after he single-handedly saved the world from an alien invasion in Duke Nukem 3D, our titular hero must come out of retirement to save the world for the millionth time after the same alien species invades Earth again. Duke fights countless aliens in the city of Las Vegas and ultimately saves the day. That's really all you need to know. What I'm going to do is go through each individual level of the game's campaign, talk about them briefly, and place them into 1 of 4 categories, depending on their quality. The highest rating we have here is great. This means a level is straight up fun to play with no strings attached. The second highest rating we have is alright. This signifies that a level is fun for the most part, but has at least one thing about it that really irritates me. On the lower half of the scale we have bad. This means a level is one that I dislike, but don't flat out hate. And the lowest rating a level can receive is stinker. This means a level is completely horrible, and I don't like anything about it. Before I start ripping this game to pieces, I just want to reiterate that I do like this game. It just gets a lot wrong, and a lot of the stuff it gets wrong is very obvious, even to casual gamers. Whenever I criticize DNF, I am not doing it to shit on the developers. Some of the people who worked on this game literally gave it their all in getting it released, and I could never hate on these people because of that. You see, in 2009, 3D Realms, the studio who worked on DNF from 1997 to 2009, shut down due to the money finally running out, and the game was essentially cancelled after Take-Two, the game's publisher, refused to provide any additional funding. I say it was only essentially canceled, however, because several former 3D Realms employees refused to give up on the game. These former employees continued working on DNF from their homes. They would eventually form the indie studio known as Triptych Games. Now, speaking as a person who's a modder, but not an actual game developer, the respect I have for these employees is off the charts. They are all incredible people who were extremely dedicated to their dream. Triptych Games ended up approaching Gearbox Software, the studio behind the Borderlands franchise, and obtained their help with finishing the game. Another development team, Piranha Games, would also be hired to create a multiplayer mode for DNF, as well as to help port the game to consoles. These three studios would finish what 3D Realms started way back in the 90s, and the game was finally released on June 10th, 2011. With that little history lesson out of the way, let's hop into the first level of the game, titled Duke Lives. DNF admittedly gives a pretty poor first impression. This opening level is completely pointless. You don't learn anything useful here, and defeating the Cycloid Emperor isn't challenging in the slightest. Given how the final level of the game plays out, you could make the argument that this level exists because the developers wanted to make use of the bookends writing technique, which is something that I'm personally a big fan of. But let's be honest here, this level is only here because the dev team wanted to pay homage to Duke Nukem 3D. This level sucks. You do get to play with some balls near the end of the level though. And well,
a few minutes later.
What the fuck?
Duke, you don't have time to play with your balls.
2 hours later.
Too easy.
Yeah! You are the best, Duke!
I'm going to put this level in the bad category. It's stupid, has nothing interesting going on, and it's ultimately pointless as you don't learn anything here. The only upside to Duke Lives is you get to play with balls. Damn, it's late, is in my eyes the real first level of DNF. This level gets a lot of criticism online for being drawn out and completely lacking in any kind of action, but I personally don't mind it too much. You have to remember that this game came out after Half-Life, and if your FPS game came out after Half-Life, you were pretty much required to have a guns down, action-free opening level to help set the scene. My favorite part of Damn It's Late is that we learn Duke is canonically a manlet.
Wow, he's so cool.
Yeah, I thought he'd be taller.
This level is going in the alright category. After digging around for the first two levels, you finally get to see some real action in this one. You don't get a gun immediately, however. First you punch some aliens, crawl through vents, punch more aliens, drink some beer, and fumble around in the dark for a bit until you're told to activate your Duke Vision and... oh god! Duke Vision looks absolutely horrible, and you're gonna hear me say that multiple times throughout this video. The screen effect for it is annoying as hell, and turning it on blinds the player. This literally hurts to look at. How did the developers think this was okay? They could have just given us a flashlight. Ugh. After damaging your eyes for a bit, you finally get your hands on a gun, the AT Laser. It's a garbage weapon, and you'll never see me mention or use it again until I go through every gun later on in the video. I know it's the first gun you get, but did it really have to be this bad? I trade this thing out as fast as I possibly can. Thankfully, you get Duke's special M1911 shortly afterward, which is a pretty good weapon. I like it. This level is fine overall. The only part I really hate is when you're in complete darkness and you have to use your Duke Vision. Fuck that shit. Seriously, like the level before it, the Duke Cave gets placed in the alright category. Oh god, this level. This is the first real boss fight in the game, and you spend all of your time here on Duke's big gun. It's so easy, it's so slow, and it's so boring. George Broussard, the lead designer for DNF from 1997 to 2009, said in January 2009 that the development team had adopted a policy known as cutting is shipping in order to finally get the game released. Well, this level should have been fucking cut. This has literally no reason to exist. It is legitimately pointless and offers no challenge to the player. I feel like this level stayed in the game because some poor developer spent months working on it and he didn't want to see his hard work be for nothing. This level fucking sucks. It could have been cut from the game and it would have actually improved the experience. The music that plays here though is admittedly pretty decent, but this level is still horrible. A certified stinker, no doubt about it. The first of many. The lady killer is pretty long, and it's a mixed bag overall. Immediately after taking control of Duke, you're thrusted into a QuickTime event because, you know, this is a 7th generation shooter game. Now this specific QTE gets a lot of flack from people online for not only being difficult, but also annoying because you have this person screaming in your ear during the entire sequence. Honestly though, I've never found this QTE to be hard, and I always beat it on my first try. I diagnose the people who say it's too difficult with a case of skill issue, though this part still sucks, just like every other QTE in this game. After exiting this elevator, you step onto a shrink pad, kicking off the first section where you're playing as Little Duke. The parts of DNF where you're Little Duke get a lot of hate from players, but I actually find them to be really enjoyable. There are 3 of them in total, and the first one here is easily the worst because instead of doing something interesting as Little Duke, we are placed into an RC car and we have to drive through the casino. Now I know I'm in the minority with this opinion, but I hate driving vehicles in FPS games. I'm not a fan of cars in real life, and I sure as hell don't want to drive them in games either, especially when I'm playing an FPS. When I'm playing an FPS, I pretty much always just want to do infantry stuff. I remember playing the campaigns for Call of Duty 4 and World at War as a kid, and whenever I got to the AC-130 mission in COD 4, or the tank mission in World at War, I would pass the controller to my older sibling and let them play through the level for me. You drive the RC car for a bit, get out of it to do some so-so platforming, then you have to get back in the car and drive some more. Eventually you wreck the RC car and you find an expander pad, bringing you back to normal size and ending the first Little Duke segment. After being restored to normal size, you get your hands on what is easily the best gun in DNF, the shotgun. I'll be talking about each individual weapon once I've wrapped up the campaign, but the shotgun is getting its own dedicated chapter. This thing absolutely rocks. In an FPS game, I value good gunplay over everything else. A game can be heavily flawed, but if the guns feel good to use, I can forgive just about anything wrong with the game. A big example of this is Rage 2. I hate the storyline in Rage 2. The open world is pointless, and there's way too much driving, which I hate. But the gunplay is absolutely amazing in Rage 2, and it carries the game. The guns in DNF vary in quality, and the shotgun is a clear cut above the rest. It has a great sense of impact, the firing sound makes it feel very powerful, its reload animation is solid, and the gun is useful in just about every combat situation. It's not as good as the Bone Duster from Bulletstorm, but that's an extremely high bar to clear. After fighting a bunch of aliens with your new weapon, you have to play with yourself for a bit, then you make your way past some trip mines and end up in an arena with a bunch of enemies and some friendly NPCs, who are honestly pretty annoying because they steal your kills and are also capable of damaging you for some stupid reason. Like I said earlier, this level is pretty long, but once you get past the crappy RC car section, it's honestly good. It has the most straightforward FPS action we've seen in the game up to this point, and I feel like DNF is at its best when it stops throwing gimmicks at you and instead just lets you shoot some aliens. Taking everything into account, I think the Lady Killer is a whole lot of alright, so of course it goes in the alright category. Now that we're outside, I just need to rant for a second. This game is flat out hideous at times. I'm not talking about how by 2011 standards, it was dated from a technical standpoint. The colors on display here are just ass. There is nothing aesthetically pleasing about this environment at all. The leaked 2001 build of DNF looks so much better than this retail version from 2011. Because that version has this thing called color, but I'll talk more about that version later. I'm blaming this color scheme on the 7th generation of consoles. So many companies during this period wanted the games to be brown, and gray and realistic and gritty. Countless games that were released during this generation looked like shit, and if you disagree, you're wrong. Rant over. Now as for the level itself, it's fine. We get some straightforward action for most of it, and that's absolutely what I'm here for. We also finally get a proper, honest-to-God boss fight. The Battle Lord, a boss from Duke Nukem 3D, returns as a boss in this game as well. You fight him twice in this game, and the first fight is at the end of this level. This boss fight is pretty good. You have to channel your inner circle strafing skills to win. There is a problem though. The difficulty of this boss fight is trivialized thanks to the ammo crates scattered around the arena, which allow you to refill your ammo an unlimited number of times. Speaking of that, ammo crates are in countless combat arenas in DNF, and in my opinion this is a really bad thing because you also have regenerating health. Now you can revoke my old school FPS fan card for this, but I actually really like regenerating health as a game mechanic. Some of my favorite FPS games feature regenerating health in some way or another. Hell, Darktran, my total conversion mod for Doom 2, has COD-style regenerating health, with a jelly screen effect and everything. I just think having regenerating health and ammo crates everywhere is a bad combination because as a result, it makes DNF like an economy. You don't really have to manage your resources in this game, except for making sure you have a can of beer on you for when shit gets real. More on that later. Anyway, let's take a look at a modern FPS game, Ultra Kill, which is an amazing game that you should absolutely play if you haven't done so already. You have unlimited ammo in Ultra Kill. Some of your weapons have cooldowns, which prevents them from being spammed, but you will never, ever run out of ammo for a gun. On the surface, this might make this game sound incredibly basic and easy, but it works perfectly because there's a balanced health economy. You can only get health in this game from damaging enemies up close, so you're going to be losing and regaining health all the time. As a result, you're constantly managing your health pool and attempting to stay on top of it. The inverse is true for Darktran, my aforementioned Doom mod. In Darktran, you have regenerating health, but ammo is a limited resource, so for most of the game, you're going to be monitoring and managing your ammo, unless you're a crazy person who's fine with using a kick attack to fight hit scan enemies. Meanwhile, in DNF, you don't have to manage your health, your ammo, or really anything at all. It invokes this feeling of simplicity that I feel like drags the overall gameplay down. Now to clarify, I don't think resource management is inherently required for an FPS to be engaging. If the game has an interesting storyline and fun gameplay, it can make up for the lack of resource management. Sorry for the long tangent, this is just something that really bothers me about DNF. As for Vegas in Ruin, it's an okay level, and I'm putting it in the alright category. Moving on. We have the Duke Dome, which is a tolerable level. It's not particularly great, but it's not horrible either. It just kind of exists for most of its run. There's a boss battle near the end of it where you have to fight an alien gunship, but unlike the last boss you just fought, the gunship has no health bar. That's bad? The gunship doesn't have a whole lot of health, so I guess the developers didn't think it was necessary for it to have a health bar. After getting to play with Duke's big ball, you make your way inside the Duke Dome, and then you... Whoa. The Hive is the worst fucking level in this entire game. Okay, from a design perspective it might not be the worst, but it's definitely my least favorite. I won't even go into the rampant misogyny and overall creepy vibe this level has, but only because that's already been discussed plenty of times over the years. What I will say about this level though, is that it's just boring. Now I despise describing something as just boring and not elaborating on it at all, but that's literally what this level is. It's boring and it sucks. And it's incredibly dark in some places, meaning you have to rely on your Duke vision to figure out where the fuck to go. And like I've explained already, Duke vision looks absolutely horrible. Easily the best part about the Hive is that you get to play with alien balls, but that's just an imitation of Prey. Not the 2017 game called Prey, and not the 2022 film that's a prequel to the Predator movies, but the wonderful game released in 2006 for the Xbox 360 and PC, which unfortunately is mostly forgotten. Seriously girls, if you haven't played Prey 2006, please do so. It's a fantastic game and it needs more love. Back to the Hive though, this level is absolutely awful and I don't want to talk about it anymore. Out of all the levels I put in the stinker category, this one deserves its spot in there the most. We had one decently designed boss fight earlier, and I guess the developers thought that one was enough. So now we have to fight the Alien Queen. Now I'm personally not a big fan of bosses where you spend most of the time fighting mooks instead of the boss itself, and that's pretty much what this boss is. Also, if you know me, you're aware that I'm just horrible with my grenade trajectory, so tossing pipe bombs onto these jump pads to hurt the boss is absolute hell for me. This level is just horrible. 2 stinkers in a row. This is the 3rd consecutive level where I have to very carefully select the gameplay I show because YouTube really hates titties. In a total contradiction from what I said earlier, Duke Nukem's Titty City is one of the best levels in the entire game. It's actually my 3rd favorite level. The reason I like this level so much is because, unlike the majority of levels in this game, there's no bullshit in it. You don't have to drive a vehicle that handles poorly, there's no horrible boss fight, and there's not even a boring turret section or any QTEs. It's just pure adventure. Having pretty colors around here helps a lot as well. Despite the dated visuals, the Slick Willy is just incredibly nice to look at. The only downside of this level is that there's no combat at all. A strip club shootout would have been very entertaining. Despite that, Duke Nukem's Titty City is the first level in this game that I'm placing in the great category. It's a shame that it took this long for that to happen. I have a funny anecdote to share about this level. There's this air hockey minigame right here where you can earn an achievement if you beat this guy 7-0. I've played DNF for 10 years and I've never been able to earn this achievement. Then on my most recent playthrough, my boyfriend sat down at my computer, tried this minigame, and won against the guy on his first try, earning me the achievement in the process. It took him just over 3 minutes to beat this guy 7-0. Well, I've never been able to do that after 10 years. Is it really a mystery why I'm insecure about my gaming skills? Crash Course is a fine level. It's pretty good. I do hate this turret section near the end though, just like every other turret section in this game, along with every single turret section in every game. Seriously, why was this a trend for such a long time? Turret sections suck in every game. I don't care what anyone says. Overall though, I'd put this level in the alright category. You surely noticed by this point that there's a trend with the levels in DNF. Every single one of them has something for me to complain about. There always has to be something in these levels that drags my overall experience down. Until... we have made it to the Duke Burger, which is unequivocally the best level in the entire game. You become Little Duke for the 2nd time, and some people resent this level for that, but in my opinion, it allowed the dev team to get truly creative here. You get to fight some aliens who have also been shrunk down, and then you get to lead these normal-sized alien troopers onto some shrinker pads, so you can deal with them as well. After this, we get a genuinely good platforming sequence in the kitchen. It's a lot of fun. The level ends with you heading to the roof of the burger joint and fighting off waves of pig cops, then waves of enforcers, and finally 2 assault commanders at the same time. And we go from a great level to an incredibly weak one. The Mighty Foot starts with another turret section, and we're also back in the brown and gray environments. After slogging through this boring turret section, you hop into the titular Mighty Foot, Duke's monster truck, and like I said earlier, I hate vehicle sections in FPS games, and the monster truck is my least favorite vehicle in this game. It just handles like ass. And I know you're supposed to hold the spacebar to use 4-wheel steering, but this thing still handles really badly. You run out of gas for the Mighty Foot 3 different times over the course of your journey with it, and this is something that annoys a lot of people, but for me, it's honestly a blessing. If I had to drive this piece of shit monster truck for 20 minutes while doing absolutely nothing else, I would fall asleep. This level sucks. It has almost everything I hate about this game wrapped up in an 11-minute long package. Another certified stinker for sure. We have now reached the level that most people consider to be the peak of this game, the Ghost Town Showdown. People legitimately like this level, and for good reason. Remember how I said that Duke Nukem's Titty City was good because it didn't have any bullshit going on? Ghost Town is the same, but you actually get to fight some aliens here. I don't really have much to say about this level, except that it's great, and the majority of the levels in this game should have been designed like this one. Ghost Town rightfully earns its placing in the great category. And god damn it, we're back to another level that's not that great. DNF frustrates me to no end. I like this game, I really do, but its quality is so inconsistent that it's impossible to praise for an extended period of time. We're back in the Mighty Foot for the first half of Highway Battle, and this part is boring, so we're gonna skip it. The second half of Highway Battle is actually pretty decent. The Mighty Foot runs out of gas, so we're back to being on foot, and we get to do some more shooting in this game that's supposed to be about shooting, and that makes your girl happy. There's this little section near the end where you get to ride a minecart back to the start of the level, and I honestly prefer stuff like this over having to actually drive a vehicle. I'm really curious though, is this minecart actually an NPC wearing a minecart-shaped hat? Anyway, despite the first half of Highway Battle being boring, it redeems itself in the second half. It's going in the alright category. Dam Top is an incredibly weak level. My favorite part about it is how you drive Duke's Mighty Foot straight into Hoover Dam's reservoir, wrecking it, and finally concluding your journey with this monster truck. Sayonara, you piece of shit. You handled horribly, and contrary to what Duke says, you did not get good gas mileage. After getting out of the water, you're confronted by the President of the United States, and he lashes out at Duke for ruining any chance of friendly relations between a destructive, needlessly hostile species and the aliens that are invading Earth. You might have noticed how I've made no prior mention of the President, and that's because he's barely even a character in the story. In fact, he only appears 3 times in the entire game. Near the end of Dam Top, you fight the Battle Lord for the second time, except this time around, you have to wear his health bar down twice, and you have to do the quick time event to finish him off twice. Now there's a lot of design decisions in this game that are just flat out stupid, and this is one of them. Having to wear down a boss's health bar twice doesn't make the boss fight any more difficult. All it does is waste the player's time. This level is yet another stinker. If you can't tell from the title, the Shrunk Machine contains the final section of the game where you're Little Duke, though that doesn't come until later in the level. First, we have to endure some cringy dialogue between these NPCs, followed by a pretty decent fight against some aliens. After that, we've got a puzzle to do, but it's less of a puzzle and more along the lines of busy work, so I don't even want to talk about it. It literally feels like filler. I really do like this part right here when you're Little Duke, mainly because it reminds me of the clock tower from the Castlevania games. Once you've gotten past this section, it's time for another boss fight. The boss this time around is a regular-sized enforcer, who is normally a mid-tier enemy, but you're still Little Duke, so he's a lot more threatening as a result. This is honestly my favorite boss fight in the game. Like the first encounter with the Battle Lord, it's pretty much just a test of your circle strafing skills, but I'll take that over what's coming. I had a hard time placing the Shrunk Machine into a category. I want to call it a great level, but the boring filler content in it holds it back a bit. I'll put it in the alright category, but it's definitely closer to being great than it is to being bad. The Fork Stop isn't a bad level, but like the Duke Dome, it's not really great either. Again, it just kind of exists. There's a boss fight against the Octa King in the first half of this level, but if you get on this conveniently placed turret, you can deplete his health bar in less than 20 seconds and watch him flee like a bitch. I wonder if we'll see him again. You get to drive a forklift in the second part of this level, and not only is it completely optional, it also handles better than Duke's Mighty Foot for some stupid reason. Are you fucking kidding me? Y'all really made the vehicle that you don't have to drive handle better than the one you spend 3 fucking levels driving? The Fork Stop is going in the alright category, but it pisses me off at the same time because of that. Generator Room starts off as another one of those meh levels, but in case you were getting bored of those, they decided to up the ante and turn it into a complete disaster. Remember the Octa King you fought earlier? That was just the warm-up. This is the actual boss fight, and good God is it terrible. This is another one of those boss fights where you spend a large chunk of time battling the boss's minions instead of the boss itself, and you are stuck on this tiny little platform for the entire duration of the fight, meaning it's next to impossible to dodge any incoming attacks. Thankfully, the boss's minions eventually stop spawning, and you can actually fight the fucking boss. Like a deadbeat dad who is forced to watch his kids on the weekends, I like to be drunk during this boss fight. Remember earlier when I said that you want to keep a can of beer on you for when shit gets real? This is when shit gets real. Drinking beer in this game gives you a big resistance to damage, allowing me to tank some extra hits, while I turn off my brain and just try to power through this pathetic excuse of a boss fight. Generator Room fucking sucks. I'm pretty sure it's obvious what category this level is going into. You know, I always forget about this level until I replay it. The reason why I forget about it is because it stinks worse than my farts after I eat a party-sized bag of Doritos. Underground is split up into two parts. In the first part, there's no action or really anything interesting going on, and in the second part... oh god. You have to fight enemies in pitch black darkness here, making the use of Duke Vision absolutely required. I literally can't play this part without getting a headache. This level sucks hard. It's going in the stinker section, and we are moving on. If you decide to ever play this game, I highly recommend you have some ibuprofen on standby for when you get to this level. It is that bad. The Clarifier is definitely better than the last two levels that came before it, and it's pretty decent overall. You have to do a puzzle in the first part of it, which involves collecting barrels and throwing them into this thing right here in order to lower this thing right here. If I don't sound too enthusiastic about doing this, it's because this puzzle feels just like the one from the Shrunk Machine. Something that feels more like busy work instead of an actual puzzle that requires you to use your brain. This level's saving grace is that it has plenty of aliens to shoot, so there's a good bit of enjoyment to get out of playing it. Overall, it's alright. Well, that didn't take very long. We've got another stinker of a level on our hands. You spend most of blowing the dam underwater, and the underwater sections of this game are hell. Duke doesn't move very fast on dry land, but he's slow as fuck when submerged in H2O. You can also only hold your breath for 15 seconds before you start losing health, and you have to stand in these bubbles to get extra air, Sonic style. You know, I remember in Duke Nukem 3D, you had this inventory item called the scuba gear, which allowed you to breathe underwater. The scuba gear isn't found anywhere in DNF, for reasons I cannot fathom. Now that I think about it, the jetpack is also nowhere to be found in this game. At the end of blowing the dam, you have to fight a boss called the Energy Leech. Despite being interesting in concept and appearance, this boss fight blows because of the aforementioned issues when you're underwater. It's the epitome of unfun, and it's also a waste of a cool boss design. Into the stinker bin this level goes. We are finally at the last level, girls, which is appropriately titled Final Battle. The final boss in this game is the Cycloid Emperor again, the exact same boss you fought in the very first level, only this time you get to bring his health bar down 3 times, and you get to do the QTE to finish him off 3 times. That's pretty much all I have to say about this level. The game ends after this with Duke seemingly dying in a nuclear explosion before asking the ultimate question.
What kind of shit ending is that?
You know, you gotta bring more to the table than just self-awareness. The last level of this game is a complete stinker, and it's really upsetting. Wow, what a game. Definitely one of the games of all time for sure. On release, DNF received generally negative reviews from critics, and while I personally disagree with these reviews, I can definitely understand why a lot of people were disappointed by the game, and why others flat out hated it. To be honest though, I feel like DNF is a legitimately good game, that is brought down by some bad design decisions and an alarming amount of levels that range from being mediocre to downright terrible. There are 23 levels in DNF's single-player campaign, and I only consider 3 of those levels to be genuinely great, with one of them not even having any shooting in it despite this being a shooting game. Out of those 20 remaining levels, 10 of them are alright, 1 of them is bad, and 9 of them are complete stinkers. Not a very good ratio of good levels to bad ones. You might still be wondering after all of this, why do I like this game? Personally, I think it's pretty clear. I love linear single-player FPS games, regardless of the time period they were released. DNF feels like this strange mix of old-school shooter design and 360 PS3 era shooter design, and it has elements from both eras that I really enjoy. I also just love Duke. Like I said at the start of this video, he's my hero. Above everything else, I think the gunplay in this game is legitimately entertaining. It's just a shame there's a lot of weird gimmicks and filler content in between the shooting. Now that I'm finished with the campaign, we can finally talk about the most important part of an FPS game. The gunplay and the guns. Overall, the gunplay in DNF is pretty decent, but there is a massive issue with it, and everyone already knows what I'm talking about. It's the 2-weapon limit. The 2-weapon limit trope was used in a freakish amount of shooters after the success of Halo 1, and literally anyone who knows ball will tell you that this is terrible design. It's anti-fun, arbitrary, needlessly limiting, and above all else, completely pointless, because if you get to a section in a game where you absolutely need to use a specific weapon in order to progress, the developers are just going to leave that weapon you need out in the open for you. Being limited to just 2 weapons at a time in DNF was a design decision that was so widely criticized, the developers ended up releasing a patch that expanded your inventory size so you could carry up to 4 weapons. It's still an arbitrary amount, but I personally think that this is a pretty fair compromise. The patch is exclusive to the PC version of the game, however. It never came out for the console versions, because fuck console gamers, I guess? Anyway, let's look at the guns themselves. This is the very first gun you get in the game, and it's by far the worst. Like I said earlier, I trade this weapon out as soon as I can. Not only do I just hate guns that fire in bursts in games, it's also very inaccurate on top of not dealing that much damage. This weapon really just has nothing going for it. Just because it's the first gun you get in the game doesn't mean it has to be complete garbage. Look at the Magnum from Halo 1, the Settler pistol from Rage 1, or the combat shotgun from Doom Eternal. Those are the first guns you get in those games, and they're useful for the entirety of the game. The point is, the AT laser sucks. I never use it once I finish the Duke cave. A good weapon. It feels good to use, and I get a kick out of its reload animation. I'm a pistol girl through and through. I really like handguns both in real life and in video games. As a result, this is a weapon that I never trade out. A fun fact about this gun is there are technically 2 of them. The first one you find is Duke's custom pistol. This one is gold plated and has Duke's nuclear insignia on it. All of the other M1911s you can pick up are just stock M1911s. This is another reason why I never trade this gun out. Duke throwing away his own special gun just seems completely out of character for him. I like the M1911. I've talked about this gun already, but I'm here to praise it again. It's modeled after the real-life Winchester Model 1300, and good God do I love this gun. It's just so fun to use. Remember how I admitted at the start of this video that I like to imitate the guns I use in FPS games with my fingers? This is one of them. Good Lord, I'm cringe. Just like the M1911, I never trade this gun out once I get it in the Lady Killer. The first fully automatic weapon you get in the game, and one of the returning weapons from Duke Nukem 3D. While I like this weapon overall, it's not as fun to use in DNF when compared to the one in Duke 3D, and that's because it's inaccurate as hell. Despite that, I use this weapon a lot just because I'm a sucker for fully automatic guns. A pretty meh gun if I'm being honest. It's definitely an upgrade over the AT laser due to it being fully automatic, but the long wind-up time keeps me from being a fan of this gun. I don't use it very often. A good weapon overall. It only holds 5 rockets at a time, but it's insanely powerful and it can lock onto enemies. The low ammunition count is also offset by the fact there are ammo crates everywhere in this game. I don't always keep this weapon in my inventory, but I very rarely trade it out due to how useful it is, especially against bosses. This is the game's sniper rifle, and you all know how I feel about snipers and sniping in general. Removing my personal bias against snipers though, the railgun is a fine weapon, but something about the hit registration just feels off. Now it's probably just because I suck, but I swear you'll hit an enemy and your shot just won't connect. It drives me absolutely crazy. I use the railgun a fair bit, but it just feels too inconsistent for me to keep in my inventory full time. The Devastator, another returning weapon from Duke Nukem 3D, is Duke's version of the BFG. Unfortunately though, the Devastator's gotten a serious downgrade. It only holds 69 rockets instead of 99, because you know, haha sex joke funny. Even worse though, the rockets take like an hour to reach an enemy, so you have to work on your tracking skills if you want to hit anything with this gun. Overall, it's a massive disappointment, and I almost never use it as a result. A very, very fun weapon that is also extremely useful. Despite this, I don't use it very much because of the game's arbitrary weapon limit. I prefer to keep regular ballistic guns in my inventory over utility weapons. The shrink ray is also pretty freaking rare. I swear you can find it like twice in the entire game. It's a great weapon, but it's incredibly niche. I always forget about the Enforcer gun until I replay the game. Like the AT laser, it's incredibly inaccurate and fires in bursts, but it instead fires explosive rockets that deal a lot of damage. Despite it packing a punch, I barely use it. I prefer the RPG. You don't get this weapon until you're very late in the game, so by default, I don't use it very much. It is fun to use, and its ammo recharges over time, but just like the shrink ray, I never feel the need to carry this thing over actual ballistic weapons. As a result, I don't use it nearly as often as I do in Duke Nukem 3D. Beyond the main weapons, Duke also has access to pipe bombs and laser trip mines, which both take up their own inventory slots. Now pipe bombs are extremely useful, and I use them all the time. As for the laser trip mines, I use them about as often as I do in Duke Nukem 3D. Meaning I never fucking use them. I actually forget I have them most of the time. I'm not saying they're useless, I just have never seen a use for them. That's pretty much all I have to say about Duke Nukem Forever. Do I think this game is worth playing? Honestly, yes, I do. But only if you can get the game for cheap, which you should be able to do. I got this game for real cheap way back in 2014, and the copy I bought on Steam so I could record gameplay for this video only costed me $5. For $5 or even $10, I think DNF is absolutely worth a playthrough. It literally feels like a piece of gaming history that you can play. This game is widely seen as a joke among the gaming community, with its main claim to fame being that it holds the world record for having the longest development time of a video game. And while I really do like this game and think it's a little bit underrated, I can understand its meme status. So does that mean I'm done here? I am, in fact, not done here. Do you want to know the thing that hurts me the most? On May 9th, 2022, an early build of Duke Nukem Forever from late 2001 was leaked online by an unknown but amazing human being. And this build is so much better than the retail game released in 2011 that it's unbelievable. This is the build of the game that was shown in the famous E3 2001 trailer, and the most accurate description of what we have here is an unfinished, rough draft. I feel the need to make this crystal clear. This 2001 build, which I will be referring to as the leak version from here on out, is not even close to a finished game, although there is a lot here. The majority of levels in the leak version aren't finished. A lot of them are just blockouts, and the levels that are finished and fully playable still contain a fair number of placeholders, such as NPCs having text-to-speech for their dialogue instead of actual voice acting. There's also a significant amount of jank in the leak version, and it's overall not very well optimized. Despite everything I just pointed out, I still believe that the leak version is worth checking out and playing. It's objective proof that DNF really was shaping up to be a genuinely great game at some point during its development. If 3D Realms had kept their heads down and worked on this iteration of the game for another 2 years, it could have seen a 2003 release. If it was released in 2003, it would have beaten both Half-Life 2 and Doom 3 to the punch by an entire year, and in my opinion, it would have been a much better game than either of those titles. I know that sounds like an absurd thing to say. I don't intend to take anything away from either of those games. I really like both of them. I just want to get across how good I think this version of DNF would have been if it had gotten finished. While I was writing the script for this video, I struggled to even pick a thing to start with when talking about why I think the leak version is so much better than the 2011, actually released, retail version of DNF. Because there's countless things about it that are better. Let's start with the atmosphere and tone. The leak version isn't nearly as lighthearted as the retail DNF. The alien invasion here isn't treated like some joke. It's played completely straight, and the game takes itself a lot more seriously. Now, despite this, the leak version still has charm and is capable of being funny. After all, it is still a Duke Nukem game. This part right here makes me laugh every time. The gameplay is also smoother in the leak version. Like I said earlier, there's a lot of jank in this build, but you can see the potential here. There's no sprint mechanic. Duke is able to move at an actual decent speed normally, and he's able to walk by holding the shift key if you ever need slower, more precise movement. The health system is also so much better. I didn't mind the regenerating health of the retail DNF at all, but it pales in comparison to what we had in the leak version. Here, you have a static health bar that doesn't regenerate on its own. Instead, you get health back by killing enemies. This system, combined with Duke's naturally faster movement, makes the gunplay in this game feel a lot more fast-paced, and you feel rewarded for being extremely aggressive. You have other ways to get your health back as well. There's food and drinks scattered around the levels to eat, and you can find a med kit which can be bound to a key and then used during combat to heal you up, Duke Nukem 3D style. On top of all this, you can loot the corpses of dead enemies and NPCs for cash, and you can spend this cash on snacks at easy vend machines to make sure you're at full health the next time you're in combat. I really like this way of getting health back. It gives me extreme Bioshock vibes. Having to drive vehicles is still present in the leak version, with the main one being Duke's motorcycle. I'm not even going to try to deny it though. This thing is awesome. So we have a more engaging atmosphere, a much better and more diverse color palette, better movement, a more robust health system, and a way cooler drivable vehicle. How else can the leak version be better than the retail DNF? The guns. The guns here just fucking rock. In place of an M1911, you have a gold-plated Desert Eagle that Duke fires with one hand. It holds 15 rounds per clip, feels really powerful when you shoot, and that reload animation is just perfect. The shotgun is great too. I honestly don't know if I like it more than the retail game shotgun, but it feels extremely punchy. In place of the Ripper, we have an M16 that has an American flag tied to it, and I think this is way cooler to be honest. The railgun, shrink ray, and pipe bombs also have way cooler looking designs, and there's a fucking flamethrower in this build as well. Nearly every gun in the leak version also comes with an alternate fire mode. The Desert Eagle can fire standard rounds, hollow points, or piercing bullets. The shotgun can be equipped with acid shells, the M16 has an underbarrel grenade launcher, the flamethrower has a flame wall ability, and the RPG can fire a fucking nuclear warhead. Am I playing Shadow Warrior? I really can't put how much I love these guns into words. They just kick so much ass. The guns in the retail DNF were mostly fine, with the shotgun being the best of the bunch, but I like all of the guns in this 2001 build. I didn't even mention the chainsaw or the freeze cannon. But that's because both of those are still very clearly unfinished, and they don't work properly. Even with those two out of the equation though, this is still a really good arsenal. The leak version of DNF isn't perfect though. There are definitely some things about it that really stink. There's this level titled Dark Hotel where you have to explore a really dark part of the Lady Killer Casino, and I hate it. The night vision in the leak version sucks, but it's not nearly as bad as Duke vision from the retail game, if only because it doesn't give me a freaking headache whenever I use it. There's also a Pipe Mania style minigame you have to do at some points in order to progress. It's very similar to the hacking in the original Bioshock game, and I don't like it in that game either. Give me Bioshock 2's hacking system any day of the week. Bioshock 2's hacking is a rare case of QuickTime events being done right. I'm also unhappy to report that turret sections were a thing at this point in development as well. Now that I think about it, a turret section was also shown in the 1998 trailer of DNF, when the game was still being made on the Quake 2 engine. God, the devs for this game fucking loved these. There's so much more I'd like to talk about when it comes to the leak version of DNF. It honestly needs its own video. Seriously, whoever leaked this is a goddamn legend. I didn't even talk about the most exciting aspect of this build though, and that's the restoration project. The DNF 2001 Restoration Project is a work-in-progress mod that's being developed by a team of independent modders. Its goal is to get the leak version of DNF into a more finished and playable state. As of me making this video, only the first episode for it has been released, but the team behind the Restoration Project has done a really great job so far. I just want to give a huge shout out to the people working on this mod. If any of you are watching this video, thank you so much for your hard work. You all absolutely rock. Now I am finished. For the time being. I didn't even talk about the Doctor Who Cloned Me, an expansion pack released for the retail version of DNF from 2011. This expansion pack contains a brand new campaign that picks up where the main game left off, and is considered by many to be a better experience than the main game. However, I think I've already taken up enough of your time. I'll save that for another video. If you're still watching at this point, thank you so much for sticking with me all the way to the end. You're an absolute legend, and I love you. Bye for now, girls. I'll see you all next time.